They invited the girl everyone called the scholarship charity case to the 10-year reunion just to watch her squirm. But she walked in as the architect, who had designed the very building they were standing in, and nobody said a word for a very long time. But before any of that, before the reunion and the reckoning and the moment that changed everything, Nora Callaway needed to find a parking spot. And the parking garage on 5th and Clement had other ideas. Nora pulled in slowly, the way she always did when she suspected something was about to go wrong. The ticket machine blinked at her. She rolled down the window. She pressed the button. Nothing. She pressed it again. The machine made a sound like a small animal in distress, and then went dark. "Okay," Nora said to the machine. "Let's not do this today. I've had a long drive. You dispense a ticket. I go inside. We both go home happy." The machine stayed dark. She pressed the button 3 more times, each one slightly more aggressive than the last. A man in the car behind her honked. Nora held up one finger in the universal sign for just a second. The machine flickered back to life, printed half a ticket, and then jammed. The paper hung out of the slot like a little white flag of defeat. "That's not a ticket," Nora told it. "That's a suggestion." She pulled the paper out, squinted at it, decided it was close enough, and drove in anyway. It was that kind of day. It had been that kind of decade, honestly, but today was the concentrated version. Nora Callaway was 31 years old. She had graduated from Hartwell Academy exactly 10 years ago, on a partial scholarship that the other students made sure she never forgot. She drove a car that had 112,000 miles on it, and a dent on the passenger side that she had stopped noticing sometime around mile 90,000. She wore a blazer she had bought secondhand and had taken in herself at the seams because she was good with her hands, had always been good with her hands, which was how she had ended up doing what she did. What she did, as of 18 months ago, was run her own architecture firm. Small, just 4 people including herself, but hers. Nobody from Hartwell Academy knew that. She had been careful about that. She found a spot on the 3rd level, parked between a Range Rover and something German that cost more than her first year of college. She sat in the car for a moment with the engine off, listening to it tick as it cooled. 10 years. She hadn't been back to Millhaven once in 10 years. She had driven 4 hours today specifically because her cousin Bex had called her 11 times in 2 weeks and said, "You need to show up, Nora. You need to show them." And Nora had finally run out of reasons to say no. She got out of the car. The elevator in the parking garage did not open when she pressed the button. She pressed it again. She looked at the button, looked at the seam where the elevator doors met, looked back at the button. "I see how it is," she said. She took the stairs. The coffee shop on the ground floor of the Callaway Tower. She had noticed the name immediately and found it darkly funny. Given that her last name was Callaway, 1 letter off, as if the universe had a sense of humor about these things. Was the kind of place that took itself very seriously. The cups had a specific angle to them. The music was considered. There was a chalkboard menu written in a font that required effort. Nora was standing in line, reading the chalkboard when she noticed that the display case had been installed wrong. She noticed things like that. She couldn't help it. The display case was angled 2 degrees off from true perpendicular with the service counter, which meant whoever had installed it had been working from a bad measurement, which meant the original spec had probably been ignored somewhere in the chain. It was a small thing. It would bother exactly one person in this coffee shop, and that person was Nora. She was still looking at it when someone behind her said, "It's the display case, right?" She turned around. The man standing behind her was looking at the same case with the expression of someone who had been thinking about it for a while. He was maybe a few years older than her, wearing a jacket that was slightly too formal for a Tuesday morning and slightly too casual for whatever meeting he'd come from, and he had the particular look of a person who had slept adequately but not well. 2 degrees, Nora said. "I was going to say 3, but..." He tilted his head. 2.5. 2, she said. "I'm precise. Are you in construction?" "Architecture." He looked at her differently then, the way people sometimes did when they heard that, recalibrating slightly, updating something. "Really? You sound surprised." "I'm not surprised," he said. "I'm interested." The line moved. Nora turned back to the chalkboard. She ordered a black coffee and a scone that she didn't need but got anyway, because it was a hard morning, and she had driven 4 hours and she deserved a scone. When she moved to the pickup area, the man appeared beside her. "Oliver Brandt," he said. He didn't extend a hand, just said it, the way people did when they were used to introducing themselves but weren't performing it. Nora Callaway, are you from here? I grew up nearby. Millhaven. Something shifted in his expression, barely perceptible. I know Millhaven, most people don't, I went to school there. Briefly. He paused. Hartwell. Nora looked at him. I transferred out junior year, he said, as if anticipating a question she hadn't asked yet. The barista called her name. She picked up her coffee, looked at the cup, looked back at Oliver Brandt. I graduated from Hartwell. Then we might have overlapped. Maybe, she said. She didn't know yet if she remembered him. She was bad with faces from that period of her life, had spent most of high school looking at the floor, or looking at whatever she was building or drawing, trying to take up as little space as possible. She took her coffee and her scone to the window counter and sat down. After a moment, Oliver Brandt sat 2 stools away with his own coffee, and they sat in the particular easy silence of 2 people who have no obligation to each other and find that restful. Nora looked out the window. The building across the street had a load-bearing issue she could see from here in the way the lintel was sitting. She thought about this instead of thinking about the reunion in 4 days, which was also in this building, which she had discovered approximately 20 minutes ago when she had looked up the address Bex had sent her. The Callaway Tower, 14 stories. Steel and glass with a limestone facade on the lower 4 floors. Opened 8 months ago. She had designed it. She had not been back to see it in person until this morning. She had driven past on her way to the parking garage and sat at the stoplight looking at it for so long that someone had honked at her, and she had thought, there it is, there it actually is. And then she had gone to find parking and had the argument with the ticket machine and had ended up here, in the coffee shop on the ground floor of the building she had designed, sitting next to a man who had gone to the same high school she had, and the reunion was in this building, and she had not told her former classmates that she had designed it, and she was beginning to think the universe was not subtle. Do you work in this building? She asked Oliver Brandt. I'm meeting someone here, he said. You? I designed it. He turned and looked at her fully. This building. Yes. He looked at the ceiling, looked at the window, looked at the particular way the light came through the glass and fell across the limestone in the way she had specifically engineered for this time of morning. He looked back at her. The atrium on the 4th floor, he said. Yes, with the light well, yes. He was quiet for a moment. That's extraordinary work. Nora felt the particular warmth of being seen accurately, not performed compliment, just stated fact. Thank you. How old are you, if you don't mind? 31. He shook his head slightly, the way people did when they were doing arithmetic and finding it surprising. And you're from Millhaven, grew up there, yes. He looked at his coffee. She looked at her scone, which she had forgotten about. Outside, Millhaven was doing its ordinary Tuesday morning things, and inside this building that she had made, something was settling into place that she didn't have a name for yet. His name was Derek Whitfield, and he arrived at the coffee shop 45 minutes after Oliver Brandt left for his meeting, and Nora recognized him immediately despite a decade, and the kind of calculated presentation that money bought. Same jaw, same way of walking into a room as though he'd been asked for specifically. Derek Whitfield had been the kind of person in high school who didn't bully you directly. That was the thing about him. He was too careful for that. What he did was subtler. He organized the narrative. When Nora had won the regional design competition junior year, Derek had been the one to suggest, loudly and publicly, and with that particular tone of friendly concern, that the judges had probably wanted to be inclusive. He had said it in front of 6 people, and then smiled at her after, and she hadn't been able to prove it had been cruelty because it had been wrapped in such plausible generosity. He didn't recognize her at first. She watched him scan the coffee shop, looking for whoever he was meeting, his eyes passing over her without landing. Then something caught, a double take, the recalibration happening visibly on his face. Nora, he said it with the performance of warmth. Nora Callaway. I almost didn't recognize you. Derek, she said. He sat down across from her without being invited, which was also a thing he had always done. He had always made himself at home in other people's spaces. Are you here for the reunion? He asked. I'm thinking about it. You should come. The warmth in his voice was doing a lot of work. It'll be great to catch up. Honestly, it'll be good for people to see how everyone turned out. Nora had learned, in 31 years, to recognize the sentence underneath the sentence. She had designed 12 buildings since starting her firm. She had learned that language too, the language of what is left out of the blueprint. "How about you?" she said. "How did you turn out?" Derek smiled. "Real estate development. We're actually doing a project right now. Mixed use, residential over retail. It's going to be the biggest thing to hit this area in 15 years. He paused, the pause of a man who was waiting to be impressed with. "I'm the lead developer. Congratulations," she said. "You know, I always thought you'd end up doing something artistic." The word artistic landing with the specific weight he intended. "Did you stay in design?" "In a way," Nora said. He waited for her to elaborate. She didn't. They talked for 11 minutes. She counted, because she had always counted conversations with Derek, measuring them the way you'd measure how long you needed to hold your breath. At the end of 11 minutes, he said he had to go, said he hoped to see her at the reunion, said it was going to be a great night, said the venue was phenomenal. Had she seen the building? It was this incredible new tower right in the center of town. "I've seen it," Nora said. "Isn't it something?" He stood, buttoned his jacket. Whoever designed it really knew what they were doing. He left. Nora sat with her coffee for a long moment. She had not told him. She hadn't planned not to tell him. She had simply looked at his face, at the specific architecture of his expression when he said artistic, and something had made a decision without consulting her. She took out her phone and called her cousin Bex. "I'm going to the reunion," she said when Bex picked up. "Finally," Bex said. "What changed your mind?" Nora looked out the window at the building she had designed, at the limestone catching the morning light. "I want to see something," she said. Oliver Brandt was standing outside the building when she left. He was on the phone, one hand in his jacket pocket, looking at the facade with the expression of a person who was listening to someone talk and thinking about something else entirely. He saw her come through the door and held up a finger, one moment, and then finished the call. "Still here," he said. "The meeting ran long?" "The meeting was fine. I was looking at the building." He said this without any performance, just as a statement of what he was doing, and Nora thought that was a reasonable and honest thing to say. "The cornice detail on the 7th floor," he said. "Is that a reference?" She looked at him. "To what?" "The Whitmore Building, Chicago, 1895. The warmth again, the particular feeling of being accurately read. Not a direct reference, more of a conversation with it." "Yes." Oliver Brandt nodded. He looked at the building the way she had hoped people would look at it, the way she had designed it to be looked at, as a thing in dialogue with other things, as a sentence in a longer language. Not everyone knew how to read it. He apparently did. "How do you know that building?" she asked. "I studied architectural history for 2 years before I switched to structural engineering." "Where?" he told her. It was a good school. She'd applied there and been waitlisted, had gone somewhere else that turned out to be better for her in the end, though she hadn't known that at the time. They walked a few feet down the sidewalk, not particularly going anywhere, both of them looking at the facade. "The reunion is here," Nora said. "Did you know that?" "The Hartwell 10-year. He was quiet for a moment. "I heard something about it. I wasn't planning to go. Because you transferred out? Because I don't have particularly good memories of the place." She glanced at him. He was looking at the building still, jaw set in a way that said there was more to that sentence and he wasn't going to add it right now. "Me neither," she said. "But you're going." "I think so." He turned to look at her. The morning light was doing the thing she had designed it to do, falling at that specific angle, making the limestone almost warm. Why? Nora thought about how to answer that honestly. About Derek Whitfield in the coffee shop saying artistic in that particular tone. About the parking garage and the ticket machine and the half-printed slip of paper. About designing a building in her hometown and driving 4 hours to see it in person and ending up in the coffee shop on the ground floor and not being able to stop looking at the crooked display case. "There's something I want to see," she said. "Whether something is true." "What's true?" "Whether it matters," she said. "Whether any of it matters now." Oliver Brandt looked at her for a moment, and then he looked at the building. And then he looked back at her. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You can. Do you want to get dinner?" "Not tonight." "But before the reunion." Nora blinked. That was a long pause before asking that. "I was building up to it. You don't seem like someone who needs to build up to things." "I don't, usually." He put his hand back in his jacket pocket. But I'm being careful. She looked at him. At the particular straightforwardness of him, the way he said things without the decorative layer, the way he had known the Whitmore building, and the way he had said 2.5 degrees about the display case, the way he had not asked her to elaborate when she didn't want to. Thursday, she said. I'm here through the weekend. Thursday, he agreed. She walked to the parking garage. The elevator opened immediately this time, on the first button press, as though it had decided to cooperate. Nora stood in it on the way up to the 3rd level and said to the elevator, "Don't think this changes anything between us." The elevator delivered her to her car without incident. The Hartwell Academy 10-year reunion was held on Saturday evening in the atrium of the Callaway Tower, the one Nora had specifically designed to have high ceilings and good acoustics and natural light from the east-facing skylight that would, she had noted in her original design memo, create a remarkable effect at sunset. Bex had arrived first and texted Nora 3 times with updates. 40 people confirmed. Derek is here already. He brought some guy with a camera, and then, there's something weird going on. Derek keeps checking his phone. Nora stood outside on the sidewalk for a moment. She was wearing a dress she had bought for a presentation 2 years ago. Dark green, the kind of dress that meant business but didn't announce it. She had driven back this morning from her hotel, stopped at the coffee shop, asked the barista, a tired young man named Jose, whether the display case had always been installed at that angle. Jose had said, "You know, you're the 3rd person to ask me that this week." Who were the others? Nora asked. Some woman from the building management company, Jose said. And then some guy this morning, older. He was very specific about it. Nora had taken her coffee and thought about this. Now she was standing outside her own building, and the sun was doing the thing she had designed it to do, and she took a breath and went in. The atrium at sunset was better than she had imagined, which almost never happened. Usually the built thing was less than the imagined thing, fell short in some small material way. The texture not quite right, the proportion slightly off from the rendering. But the atrium was doing exactly what she had hoped it would do. The light coming down through the skylight in a column that moved as the sun moved, warm and precise at once, filling the limestone walls with something that felt almost like music. 40 people in a room she had made. She stood in the doorway and looked at it, and she felt the specific pride of that, the quiet kind. Nora. Bex materialized from the crowd, grabbed her arm. You came. You actually came. I said I would. You said that the last 3 times and then you. Bex stopped, looked at her. You look different. I'm wearing the same thing I always wear. It's not the dress. Bex tilted her head. You look like you know something. I always know something. You look like you know something about this specific room. Nora said nothing. Bex gave her a look that meant this conversation isn't over, and then someone pulled her into a hug, and Nora stepped further into the atrium. Derek Whitfield was across the room with a man who was, in fact, holding what appeared to be a newer phone propped on a small tripod. A ring light clipped to the edge of it, aimed at Derek's preferred angle. Nora had been an architect long enough to understand the infrastructure of a planned performance. She took a glass of wine from a passing tray. She watched. Derek was working the room the way he always had, moving from cluster to cluster, a hand on a shoulder here, a meaningful nod there. She could see him checking his phone. She could see him looking toward the entrance each time someone new came in. He was waiting for someone. She understood, suddenly, completely, what was about to happen. She was not the person he was waiting for. Oliver Brandt walked in at 7:15. He was not dressed the way he had been on Tuesday morning. He was wearing a suit. Charcoal, well-cut, didn't need to announce itself. He walked into the atrium the way he had walked into the coffee shop, like someone who had been somewhere and arrived somewhere else, and was not performing either state. Nora watched Derek see him. The blood left Derek Whitfield's face so completely that she could see it from across the room. "Oh," Beck said, appearing beside her. "Who is that?" "Someone I know," Nora said. Oliver stopped in the center of the atrium under the skylight in the column of evening light. He looked up at the light well, at the precise angle of the glass, at the way the whole room was organized around this single vertical moment of sky. Then he looked across the room. He found her face. He walked toward her. Behind him, Derek was doing something on his phone with the frantic energy of a man trying to run damage control on a plan that had been building for weeks. The man with the tripod had gone still, uncertain. "You came," Nora said when Oliver reached her. You said it would be interesting. I don't think I said that. You implied it. He looked around the room, at the walls, at the limestone, at the ceiling. It's remarkable in here. Thank you, Nora. His voice changed, went quieter. You didn't tell anyone, no, that you designed this, no. He looked at her. Why? She'd been thinking about this for 4 days, since Tuesday morning and the coffee shop and the crooked display case and Derek Whitfield saying artistic in that particular way. She had designed 12 buildings. She had learned something over those 12 buildings about what it meant to put something into the world and let it be what it was. You couldn't stand next to it and explain it. You couldn't append a justification. You made it and it stood there, and either it was true or it wasn't. I wanted to see if the room could speak for itself, she said. Oliver was quiet. I spent 4 years in this town being told that whatever I made wasn't quite enough, she said. That there was something slightly off about me. Not quite the right family, not quite the right background, not quite legitimate. She looked at the column of light falling through the skylight. I wanted to know if I'd actually made something real, or if I still needed to announce it. He let that sit for a moment, in the way he had of letting things sit. And, he said, the light is doing exactly what I designed it to do. Across the room, Derek Whitfield was making his way toward them. Nora could see the performance being assembled as he walked. The smile, the shoulders, the particular warmth he had perfected over 20 years. Brant, Derek said, arriving. The warmth was working overtime. I didn't know you were going to be here. This is great, this is really. He looked between Oliver and Nora. Something in the look told him something he hadn't calculated for. Do you two know each other? We met Tuesday, Oliver said. Nora showed me the building. Derek's face reorganized itself. Nora watched the recalibration happening, the arithmetic. You were here Tuesday? I was. She looked at Derek. I'm here a lot, actually. This building is one of mine. The silence was specific. Not the silence of 40 people in a room going quiet all at once, but the silence of one man's understanding arriving like something heavy being set down. One of yours, Derek repeated. My firm designed it. She held his gaze. Not with anger, not with triumph, just with the particular stillness of a person who is not performing anything. 18 months of work. It opened 8 months ago. We won a regional design award for it in the spring. Derek looked at the walls, at the limestone, at the skylight, at the column of light that was still doing its precise and golden work in the center of the room. He looked like a man who was being asked to hold something he didn't have the grip strength for. I had no idea, he said finally. I know, she said it without edge. That was my choice. Why didn't you? Because I didn't need you to know. She said this the way she might say 2 degrees rather than 3. As a matter of precision, not confrontation. I needed to know. And I do now. Derek stood in the room she had made and had nothing to say, and the light fell the way it was supposed to fall, and Nora turned back to Oliver. The man with the tripod quietly folded it up and put it in his bag. Across the room, Bex was watching with the expression of someone who would require a full debrief within the hour. Tell me about the light well, Oliver said. What do you want to know? Everything. So Nora told him about the light well, about the angle of the glass, and how she had run the calculations for the solar path in November and in June, and every month between. How she had argued with the structural engineer about the placement of the supporting column, and had been right. How the limestone had been sourced from the same quarry as a building she'd loved in Philadelphia. How she had stood in the empty atrium the morning after the final inspection and just looked at it for 45 minutes without saying anything. Oliver listened the way she had hoped someone would listen, attentively and specifically, asking questions that were real questions. At some point Bex appeared and was introduced. At some point someone brought food. At some point the column of light in the center of the room shifted and faded as the sun moved past the skylight, and the atrium shifted to the warm, low light of the evening lamps, and the room became a different but equally true version of itself. Derek Whitfield left early. Nora didn't watch him go. The parking garage elevator, at the end of the night, opened on the first try again. Oliver was standing beside her. They had walked out together in the easy way of people who haven't decided what to call what they're doing and don't need to yet. The elevator has been cooperating lately, Nora said. Did it give you trouble before? The first day, it's been different since. She pressed the button for 3. I think this building likes me. Oliver looked at her sideways. The building you designed. Buildings have feelings, she said, absolutely seriously. Is that a structural engineering position or an architectural one? It's a Nora Callaway position. She watched the elevator numbers. I know it sounds irrational. You calculated solar angles for 12 months, he said. Nothing you do is irrational. You're just very precise about the things that matter and comfortable with ambiguity about the things that don't. She looked at him. Sorry, he said. That was a strange thing to say. It was accurate, she said. That was the strange part. The elevator opened on 3. She walked to her car. He walked with her, neither of them making a thing of it. The parking garage was quiet at this hour, just the ambient hum of ventilation, the distant sound of the city. What happens now? He asked. Are you going back to? Where is your firm? Portland. I'm driving back Sunday morning. Right. He nodded. And the reunion is over. The reunion is over. She unlocked the car. She looked at it, the dent on the passenger side, the 112,000 miles, the small scone wrapper she'd left on the dash on Tuesday and forgotten about. Oliver, she said. Yes, why did you actually come tonight? You said you weren't planning to. He was quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of a man who was being careful. I had a bad time at Hartwell, he said. The 2 years I was there, I was quiet, mostly, not particularly good at being a teenager. Someone made it very clear to me, junior year, that I was there on the wrong kind of grounds, that I didn't quite belong. He looked at the floor of the parking garage. I left partly because of that. And then I spent the better part of 10 years not thinking about it, and then I was standing in front of this building Tuesday morning. Nora waited. And I thought, whoever made this came from somewhere and made this, he said. And maybe there was something in that worth seeing up close, she understood. Not because she'd been told to understand, but because she did. How did you know to come? She said. Specifically tonight. He looked almost embarrassed. Bex emailed me, your cousin. She said she had a feeling you'd want someone there who... She said she had a feeling. Nora was going to have significant feelings about Bex in the morning. Currently, she felt only a specific warmth toward her. Thank you for coming, Nora said. Thank you for designing the building, he said. And for not announcing it. That required a lot of patience. It required knowing what I was trying to find out. Did you find out? She looked at the ticket stub still in her jacket pocket from Tuesday. The half-printed one, torn and barely legible. She had kept it without knowing why. Yes, she said. He smiled. It was a real smile, not a performed one. She was learning to tell the difference with him, which did not take very long because there was not much distance between his real face and his other face. Portland, he said. I'm in Seattle. I know where Seattle is, 3 hours. I'm aware of the geography. He stopped. I'm establishing that it's a manageable distance. Nora looked at him. At his jacket and his careful hands, and the way he had stood in the atrium light and said, tell me about the light well, everything. At the specific competence of a person who knows how things are built. It's a manageable distance, she agreed. He extended his hand the way she'd noticed he did things. Straightforwardly, without decoration, she took it. Nora Callaway, he said. Oliver Brandt. It was good to meet you, he said. Properly, she said. She got in the car. She drove down the parking garage ramp. At the exit, the ticket machine took the half-printed stub, considered it for a brief, uncertain moment, and then lifted the gate. Nora drove out into the Millhaven night, past the limestone facade of the building she had made, which was lit from inside now, warm and deliberate, exactly as she had designed it to be. She did not look back. She didn't need to. The building was there whether she looked at it or not. That, she thought, was rather the whole point.